I'm going to say something you probably do not want to hear. In the middle of your pain and your struggles, reaching out to help someone else who's also in pain and struggling could be the absolute best thing you could do for your healing and theirs. Welcome back to the Cassie Lou podcast and our current series on growing through grief. If you've been with us for the past couple of episodes, you know we've been talking about dealing with the hard road of grief, struggles, just pain in general, not to escape it, because we rarely can, but to really understand it, to get a better perspective on it so that we can heal and grow from it and hopefully be of use to others as well. We've talked about acknowledging our pain, what God thinks about our pain, and now we are on episode 3, where we're talking about using empathy to heal. Today we're going to talk about how, one, empathizing with others is kind of our responsibility. If we've gone through stuff, it only makes sense that we use the pain that we've gone through and the lessons that we've learned to help other people who are dealing with similar things. 2, we're going to look at practical ways to be empathetic while we are still going through the healing process ourselves. And 3, we're going to look at how empathizing with others actually helps us heal. We're going to examine how extending that empathy and support can be a powerful catalyst in our own healing. Usually the last thing we want to do when we're hurting is to reach out to other people. We want to curl up in our little hole, in our little turtle shell, or in our cave and just let the pain take control until it eventually, hopefully, goes away. Maybe we think we're broken and we're unusable. Maybe we just can't build up the effort to reach out to other people. It takes a lot when you're hurting, I get it. Or maybe we just think that we're justified and we should be allowed to wallow in our grief instead of trying to reach out to others. Regardless of why, yes, there are times when we need that alone time to heal, that seclusion in order to process things. But we need to really quickly start creating touch points with other people, even if we haven't gotten on the other side of all of that yet. And to reach out to others, we need to make sure we have the right perspective on our pain too, which starts with knowing the truth about it, which will always be God's truth. Last episode, we talked about God's perspective on pain and how He has compassion on us in our suffering. And if you haven't watched that, you can click here somewhere at the top of the screen or in the link below in the show notes to watch part 2 called Seeing Pain Through God's Eyes. We went into all of that. We talked about 3 key realizations from a God's eye view. One, that God doesn't leave us, even when we feel abandoned in our pain. He hurts when we hurt. He has compassion on us. And God sees the bigger picture and wants us to grow through and use our pain instead of wasting it. So since we know God's character and perspective a little bit better through our suffering, why is it so important to involve others? Why can't it just be something that we get past and move on and pretend like it never happened? I guess we technically can, but our goal isn't the bare minimum. If we don't use what we learn and experience in our suffering, then it's wasting what we go through. Or maybe we do use it to heal and grow ourselves, but we never use it for the good of others who may be going through similar things. We want to be effective in this life and not live only for ourselves. The reason we should focus on who we can reach during our times of struggle is because of one thing. We can. Even in the dark seasons, we should empathize and be compassionate with others simply because we can. We have the ability to. And it leads us to our first point. It's our responsibility. Let me ask you something. If you were a champion swimmer, say you actively go through specialized training, learning how to swim in the ocean, to swim against currents, and you're learning all the danger points of it, all the ins and outs, and you're good, you're really good. And one day you're at the beach with your family or your friends, and you see someone out in the water who is obviously struggling. Maybe they're okay, maybe they're not, until they're not. And there's no lifeguard on duty, no one else is paying attention. Without laws, without morals, just in your gut, is it your responsibility as someone being actively trained and able to navigate those waters to do everything you can to help that person? You could say, well, that training is just for me. That's for my own strengthening and something that I'm going through or went through in the past. I don't have to use it for others. You're right. You don't. And maybe normally you may not ever have an opportunity to. But being someone who would be a natural lifeline for someone else, you could be that one person who is literal life or death for somebody. Here's what that looks like in a more typical situation. There may be someone who reaches out to you with the same issues you had gone through, or at least very similar. And they just need a little encouragement or some advice from someone who's been there and who knows the waters. Guess what? At that moment, you are their lifeline. You are the one who is able to speak from experience on that. You're not an expert, sure, but you don't have to be. You just have to be willing to be a touch point for someone else's healing journey. I've had this happen several times. Just in the last 6 years since my divorce, women from out of the woodwork would reach out to me just for prayer or just to have someone to listen to them who's been there, or maybe in hopes of getting a little bit of advice. And it's not because I'm some expert or a marriage therapist or anything like that, simply because I'd been there and they needed someone who understood, someone to listen. Just as a side note, trolls, y'all can hush on this. I am not a divorce advocate by any means. I believe in God's purpose for marriage, his original design for one husband, one wife for life. However, we live in a broken world, and life just happens sometimes. I think it should always be a last resort, but Christian ladies especially, I need you to hear me. I also don't think that you need to believe yourself to be this horrible Christian just because you've gone through it. That's a whole nother series, though. We're not going to get into that right now. These women reached out to me simply because I'd gone through it too. For no other reason. That's it. And God saw fit for me to try and be there for the few women who were struggling with similar situations. Some of these ladies came right out of hiding in the middle of their pain to talk to me, even while the battle was still going on for me too, or at least was still fresh for me too. I wasn't on the other side of that mountain yet. Sometimes God wants to use you after your healing, and sometimes he wants you to be available during it. Because there's something about two people on a journey of healing side by side. It just carries a different weight. The point is, don't be scared to let other people see your realities and your struggles sometimes. You don't have to air out your dirty laundry. You don't have to spill everything to toxic people. We've mentioned that before. Just don't be scared to use the ugly things that you went through to be a picture of hope for someone else. People can't relate to perfect people or picture perfect lives. They relate to people who have sat in that pit and who somehow got out of it. Jesus was perfect, but his life was full of pain and grief, and people understood that. That's why he knows our pain. Scripture tells us that. And our own understanding of suffering can help other people's pain too, and it equips us to better pray for them or just to be there for them, for empathy and support, just to be a listening ear if they need to talk it out. Our own unique experiences with grief and struggling, it's deeply personal and it's very often isolating, but it can actually become a unique lens through which we see other people's pain a little more clearly, maybe more so than other people would. We've walked through valleys, we understand the sting of loss, the confusion, the anger, the moments of feeling absolutely alone. And sometimes we can have a little bit of advice or a little bit of encouragement or just an uplifting word that only comes from walking that same journey. And it just happens to be exactly what the other person needed to hear in that moment. Let me give you a real everyday kind of example for this. Those of you who are parents, you're really going to understand this. You remember the days when your kid was oh so sweet and little, and maybe they went through a phase of throwing fits when they didn't get their way, or maybe they would just pout, or they would scream or cry or throw a tantrum. You navigated those waters. You're out on the other side of it. Maybe your kids are teens, maybe they're grown, but you came out on the other side of that wiser, hopefully. Now you're in the grocery store and you see a parent struggling with their little one. The kid is crying and pitching a fit, and you see an absolute exhausted parent in front of you, and their eyes look helpless. You have two choices for a reaction. You can be that crotchety person who immediately judges them and internally condemns that parent for not keeping their child in line, or you can remember how it felt. You remember the embarrassment, the exhaustion, the feeling like a failure, and you can look at that mom or dad and offer just a sympathetic smile. Maybe even tell them they're doing a good job, even if they don't feel like it, because you've been there and you remember. You know it's hard. That right there is sometimes the only thing they need in that moment. They just need somebody to see them, for them not to feel alone, that they're not failures, and that someone else gets it. That's empathy. That's using your past struggles. It doesn't always have to be extreme grief. It's pain, it's struggles. You can use your past struggles to encourage and uplift someone who's going through the same thing because you know what it feels like. And whether it's a more universal struggle like early parenthood issues or a deep grief that only a handful of people ever go through, this lived experience isn't meant to be kept to ourselves. God can redeem our pain and difficult journeys and use it as a tool for His kingdom to help others. Even if your pain is years or decades old, it is never too late to redeem that pain that you went through and refuse to waste it, to have some good come out of it by helping someone else. Listen, someone out there needs your story. Friends, that's what a testimony is. It is your story. But to use your story, you need to know it first. Reflect on it. Don't be scared of it. What was the pain? Where did God bring you out from? What did you learn? How did God comfort you in that time? And we've looked at this verse before, but 2 Corinthians 1:4 says that we are supposed to comfort other people with the same comfort we receive from God when we're struggling. Because it's very specific to the issues that we deal with. And once we experience that ourselves, we can give that to other people. Empathy means to not just understand what someone else is going through or what they feel from a head knowledge, but an actual heart understanding. You can feel what they feel because you've been there. Every person wants to be seen and to be understood, and empathy is the fastest way to do that. Now, point 2, practical ways to empathize while we're still healing. It's not always easy. Like I said before, we don't always want to reach out to other people when we're hurting, but there are some really easy, really practical ways that we can do this. It's just looking at how to translate our understanding of empathy into tangible actions. Little things that we can do even when our hearts are still hurting and raw. It's not about having all the answers or fixing someone's pain. Sometimes trying to makes it even worse. It's just about showing up and offering genuine support. So, let's look at a few ways that we can do that for other people. One is active listening. It sounds so simple, but this is actually really huge, and not just for healing, but really in any relationship. This is a key to communication, for connecting with the other person. It's about truly hearing what someone is saying, not just waiting for your turn to speak. You are practicing non-judgmental listening. You're creating a safe space for them to share their feelings without interruption or unsolicited advice. Sometimes just being heard is the most profound comfort. And ask open-ended questions that encourage them to share more, like, how are you really feeling today? Now, I know you're fine, but really, are you? You are pushing them to open up. If they want to, they can always refuse, but you're giving them the opportunity, telling them this is a safe space for you to be able to do that. Another is offer practical help. Think about tangible ways that you can make their burden of life right now just a little bit lighter. It could be bringing them a meal, offering to run errands for them, picking up some over-the-counter medicine or a couple of groceries or things like that, helping with childcare. Maybe they've got a couple of kids and they just need an hour to rest. It could be just being present. Being a consistent presence is helpful. Now, I'm not talking about to the annoying point where they're just like, oh my gosh, go away already. But just being willing to be there, even if nothing's going on. Small acts of service of any kind can speak volumes. Just be mindful of not overstepping or assuming what they need. Sometimes it's really good just to straight out ask, is there anything specific I can help you with right now? It's kind of like when you ask people what you can be praying for. Is there anything specific I can be praying for you right now? Those are very, very important things to be able to do for someone. And we mentioned another one a second ago. Share your story appropriately. This can be a huge comfort for another person to know that they're not alone. Share your experiences of grief when it's appropriate and without making it all about you or dominating the conversation. You're just creating a powerful connection point. Be mindful of the timing and your focus. The goal is to offer understanding and hope, not to compare suffering or to try to make yours bigger or get pity out of them. That is not the time to do that. Not that there's ever a time to do that, but you know what I'm saying. Simple phrases like, I remember feeling like that. That can be hugely validating to somebody. And like we said, pray for them. In that moment, if possible, just say, hey, do you mind if I pray with you about this right now? Put your arm across their shoulder and just let them know that you mean it when you actually say you're going to pray for them. And here's a really important one. Know your limits. You're healing too, right? Be there, be helpful. The little things that you can do go a long way, but it is crucial for you to remember that you are also on a healing journey. You can't pour from an empty cup. So just be mindful of your own emotional capacity. And don't feel guilty if you have to set some healthy boundaries. A lot of times hurting people will reach out and try to grab onto whoever's there, and that's fine to be that person, but those healthy boundaries are really important so that you both can continue healing. Which, now that we've looked at how it can help others heal, what about us? It's okay to be a little self-focused when you're going through struggles or just a really difficult journey or season of life. It's not a sinful thing to also take care of your own needs. So how does empathizing with others actually help us during our healing journey? One, it helps shift our focus. When we can focus our attention outward on someone else's pain, it can actually provide a very valuable, albeit temporary, respite from our own internal struggles and the turmoil that's going on inside of us. It just allows us to step outside of them for a little while and to be blessed by being a blessing to others. Two, it helps us find a purpose in our suffering. When we're using our pain to help others, it can give our pain a little bit of purpose and meaning. It kind of reinforces the idea that our experiences, even the difficult ones, are not wasted. And this aligns with the principle that we discussed in the previous episodes. They all go together and they're all required for proper healing. It helps us build connection. Human connection is vital for healing. When we connect with others through empathy, we break down those feelings of isolation and build a sense of community and shared humanity. And this reminds us and others that we're not alone in our struggles, that other people understand and they've been there. Another way that empathizing with others helps us in our own healing journey is that we are able to witness resilience. We can see other people going through really hard times, and when they carry it with dignity and strength and they can grow from it and turn around and use it, that's inspiring to us. I know of several people who very recently have gone through some very difficult things, some very close and heavy losses in their lives, but they are godly women. They carried their grief with dignity and with honor, which does not mean that they didn't show it or they didn't feel it. It's that they understood that God had a bigger picture and they're trying to use it for His glory, for the good of others, for their own growth. And that, to me, it shines so brightly. It's such an impactful thing to watch someone else handle their grief with resilience. And what that does is it is a powerful motivator for us in our own healing. We can say, you know what, they've gone through this, I can go through this. And ultimately, when we reach out in empathy, we are mirroring the heart of Christ. We experience a deeper sense of peace and purpose, even in the pain, and that contributes to our own healing and spiritual growth. we are becoming more like Christ even in the suffering. As a matter of fact, we become more like him the most in our suffering. Next week, we're actually going to look deeper into these. We're going to get some really good ideas of where and how we can plug in and not waste our pain, ways that we can reach out to other people who may be going through similar things. I'm going to provide some resources for you to be able to access some of those places, to be able to use what you've gone through to help others so that you both can move forward in your healing process. And listen, if you found this episode encouraging at all, please share it with someone who might need it, someone who might be going through a difficult time or has in the past. Until then, keep healing. Find someone that you could share your story with, that you can empathize with. And I will see you right here next time. Or if I don't see you on here, I will see you in ink.